r/out of the loop. Agarix says, what is the deal with Republicans trying to end in vitro fertilization? This is one I truly do not understand. Why would someone want to prevent women who very much want to have children from using the only means available to have them? And not a prep, he says. Answer: this is just the next logical step when extrapolating out from the position that life begins at fertilization. The IVF process involves fertilizing multiple eggs, resulting in the production of multiple embryos. However, not all of the embryos will be used, and the remainder are discarded/destroyed. If you believe that life begins at fertilization, then destroying the unused fertilized embryos is technically an abortion, which is banned in several states. As a result of this, IVF would be against the law in those states. Not Lickalival says, wait until they find out what women's bodies do with extra embryos. Smilling Freak says, shh, don't give them ideas. Biff64GC2 says, answer: IVF isn't being banned directly. It's just the inevitable next step of their anti-abortion rhetoric, that life starts at conception. The Alabama Supreme Court recently ruled that embryos are humans and therefore are extended the same right to life as people. This opened up an IVF clinic to being sued for the wrongful death of some embryos after some were accidentally destroyed. This caused major IVF centers to put all treatments on hold because they suddenly had a massive liability on their hands that would be pretty suicidal to take on. Some Republicans, especially in Alabama, have said they will restore IVF access through legislation, although how that will be done remains to be seen, as you need to somehow protect IVF centers from being sued for killing humans, but also can't allow abortions to become legal, but also need to ensure pregnant women aren't charged for child neglect or manslaughter for miscarriages, but also not allow pregnant women to claim extra dependents for unborn babies. The reason some Republicans are against fixing it is because we're into the next election cycle, and this mess is a direct result of Republican/conservative views, and the Dems are trying to get bills together to protect IVF. If Republicans support these efforts, it acknowledges they screwed up, potentially opens a path to make abortions legal again, and gives the Dems a victory to ride into election season on. If they refuse, their voters are going to start losing access to IVF. r/out of the loop. True or Phallus says, what's the deal with redditcares? I've seen a number of comments in the last day indicating that people are getting redditcares from other redditors, and the suggestion is that it's a negative thing. What are they talking about? Why are redditcares bad? Please don't send me redditcares, I just want to know what the deal is. Beetle42 says, answer: some people use it as a way to suggest that the recipient must be mentally unwell without actually being concerned for the person's well-being. When used in this way, it's not a supportive tool, it's a cheap attempt at an insult. Edit: probably unsurprisingly, someone has in fact sent me a redditcares, presumably inspired here. Ferrofish says, it's also a way to send a spammy message to their inbox without your name attached. Gajumpanal says, for anyone on the receiving end of this kind of bullshit, you can block the redditcares account, so you never get the messages, even if someone tries to get one sent to you. 3mtilord says, answer: redditcares is Reddit's suicide prevention hotline, or whatever you'd call a hotline for a text-based platform. Getting falsely reported to the suicide prevention hotline is the equivalent, in the context of bad sportsmanship, to saying kill yourself. Chasman1965 says, personally, I take it as the person saying you win. I have no rational way to counter your argument, so I will pretend you are mentally ill. Andrew 1990 meters says, answer: they're used to troll people. A good idea abused by the usual crowd. I've received 2, both within 24 hours of posting something pro-trans. r/out of the loop. Lesbian Siegelman says, what is going on with the OK/TX wildfires and people saying, if it's blue it wasn't burned down? I'm seeing all sorts of stuff about people saying the wildfires are intentional and actually caused by an energy weapon or something IDK, and always followed by pictures of devastated landscapes with like a blue house or car still standing. Saying things like a wildfire doesn't burn hot enough to melt half the things that are destroyed. I don't think that's true, and saying similar stuff about the Hawaii fires as well. Then with that clip of Biden talking about it being used as proof. The comments were saying look at the people's eyes behind him, and I thought they meant he was babbling incoherently, and the people behind him like couldn't contain their incredulity, but apparently they meant rat the people behind him were surprised he said the quiet part out loud. Where is this energy beam stuff coming from, and how can the color blue just be the solution? Link to video. Boston 123 says, answer, this is part of the continually churning conservative/Republican conspiracy theory mill. Just like the Jewish space laser nonsense from last year, the idea of this is that the current wildfires in Texas and Oklahoma now were caused by the left, indicated by how blue-colored things didn't get damaged by the fire. Blue, of course, being the color of the Democratic Party, saying things like a wildfire doesn't burn hot enough to melt half the things that are destroyed. I don't think that's true. It isn't true. Wildfires can reach 800 degrees Celsius, 1472 degrees Fahrenheit, quite easily, and certainly more, when oxygen is added via high winds. Umru 316 says, HARP has been blamed for wildfires, earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricanes/typhoons, and mind control among other things. It is actually a system that studies the ionosphere, originally to improve communications and possible surveillance capabilities. Obtuse One says, what causes someone to be so afraid of change they deny the existence of, wildfires? Birthday Trowaway says, answer, in order to deflect from decades of completely failed policy and disproven ideals, conservatives have to invent crazier and crazier stories to stoke fear and confusion in order to get their cultists to vote against their best interests. Throwaway 74,127,412 says, answer, conservatives are high on drugs and have no idea what they are taking about, as per usual. r/OutOfTheLoop. Quest says, what is going on with the apparent increase in right-wingers in r/UK and other UK subreddits? I have been using Reddit for a number of years, have often lurked on r/United Kingdom and r/Politics. Both tend to usually have commenters that are generally center or center left. However, in the past few months I have noticed an increased sentiment against migration, certain religions, such as Islam, and general greater support for right-wing parties and opinions. Example, has anything happened to the normal users of these subreddits? Or has there just been an increase in right-wing/anti-immigration sentiments on UK subreddits? Electric Fox 5 says, answer, it could be any number of things. One user has already mentioned the possibility of crembots. I wish that we could proscribe all of our troubles to them, but sadly we can't. But I certainly wouldn't discount their presence, and to be honest, this year above all others we're going to see a metric shed load of crembot activity in both the UK and us. Sadly though, it's also media influence outside of the internet. If you look at the print media in the UK, probably about 75-80% of it has gone steadily more and more right-wing over the last 20 years, to the point where it's now sounding like the National Front would have done back in the 1970s/80s. When a newspaper like the Financial Times starts to sound almost left-leaning in comparison, then you know something has gone wrong. Now, we are in an election year, both here and the US. Although ours might not take place until early next year, we are still for all intents and purposes in one, and while it's almost a certainty that conservatives will lose, they are going to be using every single dog whistle, dirty trick and tactic in the book to try and narrow the gap between them and Labour, and if that means that they start saying the quiet bit out loud, likely Anderson or Sula Braverman, and then that's a gamble that they are willing to take because they estimate that enough of the country might agree with them, or at the very least think, well, they're saying the things that other people aren't brave enough to say, that they'll be able to claw back some points from Labour. Not enough to win the next election, but maybe enough to at least keep their local seats and give them a fighting chance of becoming the next leader of the Conservative Party, even if it's in opposition. So, with all that chaff in the air, plus the absolute cluster that is the current situation in Israel and Gaza bringing everyone's attention back to Muslims again, and no doubt in a few months when the weather clears up in the Channel or the Rwanda is a safe country, because I say it is Bill clears the House of Lords, we'll have the whole small boats discussion again, so there's that to look forward to. And in short, if you want nuanced centralist political discussion, best just steer clear of the UK and us and anything related to them for the next year, because it just isn't going to happen. Not in this climate. Steepleton says. It's vastly noticeable. Anecdotally, I know for certain there's a Ruckpul mod who's kicking low value content lefties, and yet the old guard are surprised that they're up to their neck in folk who have very specific concerns about Muslims. He's not a Russian, he's just a misanthrope. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.